Welcome to the Good Morning from the Chicken Coop podcast with Kim Johnson, your creative strategist and master mindset coach. Filled with inspiration, distinctions, perspectives, and possibilities, we help you to cultivate a mindset that leads you to create the best version of yourself you could ever imagine. Join Kim every morning from one of her favorite happy places, her chicken coop, along with all her chickens.
Hey everybody, good morning from the chicken coop. Today we are talking about intuition. And I'm actually came up with this concept of recording this one because I have a client who asked me about it recently, and she said, I'm so confused because I hear so many different versions in my head and I'm not quite sure what is the truth, what is the intuition, what is my head just getting in the way. And I thought it would be worthwhile for me to address here because I'm sure she's not the only person that has this happening. And I know I have it happening. So I think as a human being, you run into that quite a bit. So what is intuition? And yes, we all have it. We all have that. And we often refer to it, we'll say, I need to think about something. You're in your head, you're pondering all of the stuff. But then we have these very distinct moments where we say, well, my gut tells me to go with this. And we as human beings, it's so funny how we can identify it's coming from two different places. One of them is coming from our head, and one of them is coming from our gut, our heart, if you will. Some people say that's the communication of the soul. It's your tether to God. It's whatever you believe. But there is definitely a distinct difference in the feeling. And this is where people get hung up because sometimes they don't want to trust that piece, or they'll think, I have to go off. Their brain gets in the way and they go into the thinking process and they have to go, well, I have to go contemplate that. Or often when people go through something, they'll say, hey, I knew all along. In my gut, I knew I wasn't supposed to do that. And I did it anyway because I thought it was the right thing to do for advancing my career or, getting to this other place or whatever it might be. They'll discern it. They'll actually sit there and say, I knew it wasn't the right thing. I knew I shouldn't have gone in that direction, and I did it anyway. So how do you cultivate your intuition so that you are capable of using it more readily and not feeling like it's throwing you off, if you will? I think the most important part of the process is to pause. When you are in a situation of pausing and you just put yourself on hold for a second and you pull back, you can tell where the emotions are coming from. You can tell where those are residing, if you will, if they're in your body or if they're in your head. And if that frenetic energy, that anxiety, the panic, whatever it might be, is showing up, a lot of times that's an indicator you're in your head. And a lot of times, now nothing is definitive, I can't stress that enough, nothing is definitive with this, but a lot of times anxiety is coming from your head, from the sense that it's telling you, well, you better da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's not clear thinking. I mean, I think we can all agree on the fact that most anxiety is not coming from a place of clear thinking. It's coming from a place of uncertainty and trying to control a lot of things, which is never, ever helpful. That's why hitting the pause button is so important, and putting yourself in a place where you can actually stop and think about your words, your actions, and your direction moving forward. If I had to say one thing that I think ties you into intuition more than anything, it's being able to pause, collectively catch your breath, putting yourself into a state of getting centered and then choosing. There is always power in pausing and taking the time to collectively catch your breath. It doesn't take very long. It just takes the time to be able to get yourself centered. So for some of us, we can get centered very quickly, and some of us takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it can take up to a day. I mean, there are times where I will say to my husband, listen, I'm going to need to think about this, and it's going to take me a couple days, and I will collectively put myself on a hold where I will say I'm not capable of making a decision right now. Or as I say to my clients, in the current state that you're in, you're not qualified to make a decision for yourself because you're too emotional right now and you're not listening to your intuition, you're listening to your brain. So you've got to go and say, okay, for the next 24 hours, I'm going to put myself on a pause and I'm going to collectively take in all the information from my head and my gut, and then I'm going to process through it. And that is the most powerful position to be in, because you've said to yourself, I take the pressure off, I'm not going to force myself to make a fast decision and do something that isn't right for me. So your intuition is always there. It's you being able to tap into it and get the other crap out of the way from your head. Just get the other noise out of the way, push it out to the side, and get collectively centered, pause, whatever amount of time you think you need to pause, and then listen to it. And I will say this, and I think that this is probably one of the most difficult lessons I had to learn. Oftentimes, our intuition is not the loudest voice, okay? Important distinction. It is not always the loudest voice in our head. Sometimes it is, 100% it is. I mean, when my son had an accident and he was little and he was in a swimming pool and he went to the bottom, my intuition was to jump in that pool and I didn't even think about it. There was no pause. It took over. And I think in those situations, it does take over. But on a daily basis, our intuition is more subtle. It's a little more reserved. It stays and pulls back. And you don't need to jump in the pool on those moments. When it's whispering to you, you still need to hear it, but it can't get to you if you're not pausing enough to listen to it. So don't be afraid to pause. Listen to all of it and then move forward. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you guys have an outstanding day, and I will see you tomorrow.